She was just a little girl when Daddy shot the world. She was putting on her roller skates when she heard her mother crying. Innocence was stripped away, captured in a jar, put high upon a shelf she couldn't reach. Now here she comes, she's holding it inside. She's being brave, she's making up for lost time. 'Cause when it's gone, you can't have it back again. She's moving on, rage on. Don't let the fascination fade away. Rage on. Don't forget to get carried away with the thrill of it all. Rage on. It was just another day, or at least it started out that way. The look in her eye betrayed the way she felt. He forced a smile and said, we'll see it through together. He's thinking back to the night they couldn't say goodbye. They held on tight until the shadows turned to gray. He's with her now, she's closing her eyes. She doesn't want to say goodnight, but he'll never say goodbye. 'Cause when it's gone, you can't have it back again. Rage on. Don't let the fascination fade away. Rage on. Don't forget to get carried away with the thrill of it all. Rage on. When it's gone, don't you get to get it carried away. Fascination fade away. When it's gone, don't you get to get it carried away. Fascination fade away. When it's gone, don't you get to get it carried away. Fascination fade away. When it's gone, don't you get to get it carried away. Fascination fade away. When it's gone, don't you get to get it carried away. Fascination fade away. When it's gone, don't you get to get it carried away. Fascination fade away.
That was Rage On by Chris McKay and the Critical Darlings, and I am very pleased to be joined right now by Mr. Chris McKay himself.
Thank you for having me.
I've been listening to a lot of your music lately, and I wanted to see if I could get you on air just for an interview, and I appreciate you taking the time to join me. I've done a little research on you, but I can't say that I know too much. Yeah. And I wanted to just ask you just some basic questions, and we'll play some of your songs, some old songs, some new songs, any songs of your choosing, maybe one or two of mine, if that's okay.
Absolutely. That makes it easier on me.
All right. So first of all, I know you're from South Carolina, Camden, South Carolina. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay. I lived in Camden County, New Jersey, which I'm guessing is much different than Camden, South Carolina. So tell me a little bit about Camden.
So, yeah. Well, Camden itself is a really artsy town in the middle of, well, not artsy state. It's a historic town, and a lot of people... It's a weird situation where there are a lot of really poor people and a lot of really wealthy people.
Okay.
So it's a strange dynamic and mix where this part of the town is society of sorts, and the other side is not.
So you're talking about the haves and the have-nots, and basically very little.
I was closer to the have-not most of the time.
Very little middle ground there.
Very little. I think I drifted in between, but my home base was more on the have-not side, on the other side of the river. Yes, the Watery River. That's the name of the river.
Now,
Believe it or not, it's an Indian name.
Do you still have roots in the area?
Yeah, my family lives there. What's left of them. Most of my best friends are still there because I tend to hold on to them, which I guess is a good thing, but sometimes it can be weird. I don't get to go back as much as I did, but does anybody get to go anywhere or do
nobody's
anything?
really going anywhere right now, so you're far from alone.
Right.
But now, as far as music, how did you really first, if you can recall, how did you first discover music and how much of a passion you were going to have for it? Was anybody in your family a musician? Or?
Yeah, it's the thing where my family, it was omnipresent, really. My grandmother in specific was a Southern gospel musician, and there were always instruments around, and the family would get together and sing gospel songs, I Saw the Light, and all the Southern gospel classic stuff. And so, no kidding, literally some of my very first memories are me trying to play the guitar that seems like a giant comical guitar, but it was a normal size one. And not having any idea what I was doing. And over time, she taught me some of the basics. My father, who wanted to be a musician desperately, but there was no chance of that, taught me some bar chords, and me being me, I couldn't really be taught. So I had to go out and make it up as I went along, and eventually some things stuck.
I can relate to the father wanted to be a musician but wasn't. Mine was the same way. Mine bought a 1975. He bought a brand new Martin D28 guitar, and that caused some troubles in my household because we weren't the haves either. Let's say, and he couldn't play a note. He couldn't play a chord, but he had this vision of he was going to play Gordon Lightfoot songs and Johnny Cash songs, and just for various reasons it never came to be. So when you said that struck a chord with me. No pun intended on that.
Yeah, perfect. Yes. But fortunately, my dad found softball, and he was, into that world when he wasn't working. And a guitar may be a poor substitute for a softball, but a softball may be a worse substitute for a guitar. So I guess it depends on your perspective.
Now, I've just been doing some research on you. I noticed that I saw some of your old photos from your teenage days, and you were playing in bands probably pretty darn early. I'd say I saw some that were definitely high school era, let's say.
Oh, yeah. The first real band, I guess I was barely 16. I was in bands in my head for years before that. Yeah. And writing songs from the time I was able to write. But the first real quote-unquote band was called Indecent Exposure, once they made us change our name. And played the talent show and somehow won the damn thing, even though we were horrific. So that was the start. And from there, it's kind of hard once you see the whole gymnasium full of the people who treated, how cliques are in high school.
Oh, sure.
And again, I kind of moved in between, but that was the first time that I saw everybody all of a sudden responding positively to not just me, but the other people who could have been more outcast in the band, and clapping and singing and jumping, and it was to an original. So we were seen very differently after that.
That's the thing with original music is that if you play something, and I've experienced just an infinitesimal amount compared to yours on that, but when you play something that you could say, I wrote this in my living room, and people are just enjoying themselves to it and really responding to it. That's just such an amazing feeling.
It's an otherworldly feeling. It actually, it to this day freaks me out. There was a song I wrote a little while back, and I released it. My mother died last year, and there were a lot of other people that were losing family members that were close to me, and I wrote this acoustic song. It was very simple, and I posted it And several people seemed to like it enough that they actually sent me clips of them singing it, which has never happened. And it was just kind of emotionally overwhelming to me thinking of where that song came from, and that it immediately impacted a few people that thought enough of it that they would send me a cappella recordings of them singing this little song. Yeah, that was weird. If you can't tell, I'm usually more able to communicate, but when I'm in this mode and remembering that, I get more self-distracted.
Oh, okay.
Because that was overwhelming. It was very strange.
So, and then you eventually settled into Athens, where you are to this day. How old were you when you moved to Athens?
I began visiting here in 1987 because my wife was going to school here, although she was not my wife at the time. So I started spending time here then. We were in Auburn, Alabama, starting in about 1992. That's where we moved in together and got married the year after that. Auburn, Alabama ain't for me. I'll put it that way.
I got you.
She had a good job there and everything, but there was no life for me there, man. There was no anything. Nice enough people, but after we were at a show, it was probably a Lollapalooza or something, and Atlanta, which was the midway point, and I remember seeing a T-shirt that said Athens, Georgia, because it's everything that Auburn isn't. And
Wow.
between that and the fact that we both knew and loved Athens already, she was like, we need to just go, even though she had a good job. So we moved here, and for years scraped to survive, doing anything that we could, but it became home very slowly. And now I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else, and I'm just starting to feel like this is really home.
Really?
Oh yeah, a few years back, and there was a specific moment actually. Valina Vigo runs the 40 Watt, or she was the booker, I guess. And she's well into the scene and always has been. And all of her friends, the owner used to be married to Peter Buck, and they're all part of the scene. And I always felt like I was outside of it, and like an interloper that had come in. And there was one night, I think Dallas Austin, the producer, was doing a rare music show, and I was covering it. He had hired me, and outside, she introduced me as part of the family. And that's the way she put it, and it really struck me. And then a second time with the same thing was Robin Hitchcock was there.
Oh, wow.
And for some reason, I was supposed to be photographing, and Robin's people were like, no photographers, just came up to me. And I was like, well, I'm cleared. And he said, yes, but Robin's decided no photographers underneath. I said, okay, I respect that. My friend had driven in from North Carolina to shoot, and he was like, but I came all the way in. Robin says no photographers. Valina sees this and comes up and says, he's with me. And she immediately is like, oh, I'm so sorry. Whatever you want to do is fine. Come backstage, do anything you need. And I heard her say that phrase again. She said, that's Chris. He's been a part of the family for a long time.
Part of the family.
For a long time was the addition. And I was like, I guess this is home.
He's part of the family. I like that.
Yeah. To be a part of a scene that's like that, so historically important to music, even tangentially, is a big deal to somebody that is so into music history.
Absolutely.
What was I saying?
Well, I was going to ask you about, so you and your wife moved to Athens.
Yes.
And so then you were doing are you already considering yourself a professional musician at that point? Were you doing solo
does
shows?
Professional mean money?
Okay, yeah, okay. I didn't really think of it that way, but yeah, for purposes of our discussion, yes. Were you getting paid?
Not enough to count as being paid. I was playing. I had a band called Q-Sign. Terrible name, but we were named one of the best unsigned bands in America by Musician Magazine. Didn't mean a damn thing. But it was nice. It looked good in a press kit. And we made a solid record. We tried to do that for a few years. Couldn't keep it together. And that's basically when I got to the point where I was between bands. We broke that up. It's like, I worked on this for years. I need to find something else. Couldn't afford concerts anymore, which I loved. So that's when I went to Flagpole. And Ballard Leeseman took that chance on me. He was like, just go to a show. Write something, turn it in. If it doesn't suck, we'll run it. And me being me, I had a choice. I was like, the first Friday night, I'm going. This was a couple of days later. Alex Chilton was playing, and at Athens, and Rick Springfield was playing in Atlanta. And I thought it would be funny if I wrote a Rick Springfield review for my first review for Flagpole magazine. So I wrote the review, and Ballard thought that was hysterical. And it turns out he was a closet Rick Springfield fan when he was young as a drummer. And he was like, I'm running the piece. And from there, I was like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And then he said, would you think about taking pictures so we can have some original? It was his idea. And I was like, wait, you mean I can get a photo pass and get even closer and possibly sometimes go backstage? Hell yeah, let's try this.
Who's going to say no to that?
Absolutely. And then another person met me later, when I got my first digital camera. Atlanta was very competitive with photographers and with events at this time. And I was shooting Billy Idol, I think, at the Tabernacle. And this big, scary guy that I thought was a road manager came up to me. I was alone. I didn't know anybody. He walked up to me and pointed his finger in my face, big, scary guy, and said, all right, this is what's going to happen. You see all the other photographers? I don't like any of them. You look like you're a cool guy, so I'm going to stand here and we're going to look like we're talking so nobody bothers me. Do you understand? Okay. And I kind of started laughing. And we had a conversation until the lights went down. And then after that, it turned out this guy was a big deal. And he started saying, well, I'm putting together a photo team. You're on it. He didn't ask. I was like, I'm not qualified. He was like, anything you don't need to know, I'll show you. And then I wound up syndicated.
And then at that point, when he's saying this, it probably kicked in that maybe I should just shut up and let this guy do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he's retired now, but he was in the business for 40 years and took a lot of iconic shots that I knew growing up and hadn't known at the time. And of course, I'd like to say that we're friends now, but I don't want to speak for him because he will use that voice on me again.
Understood. So now, but as far as music in Athens, was Critical Darlings, was that your first really big musical project in Athens?
Q-Sign was probably the first real one. Critical Darlings, I don't know how big it was. The funny thing about the Critical Darlings is it seems to be remembered as bigger than it was.
Okay.
We got more attention outside of Athens, and we got more attention in towns that we would have never hit. We got airplay in New Zealand and Australia and Poland, and we would be lucky if we had 10 or 15 people come to see us in Athens.
Because that's the first I'd ever heard of you. I mean, this is going back to the mid-2000s. That's how I first saw your name. And
Where would you have seen it?
I was with the Hounddog radio station back from 2005 to 2010. This is back in the MySpace days. I would scope out just local, anywhere in Georgia, I would look. But obviously, Athens has such a huge concentration of original bands, or at least it did back then. I assume that's still the case. And I found quite a few that I thought were really good. And I remember seeing your name and the Critical Darlings, but I can't find any of the recordings from back then because I don't know if I ever had any or if I just saw the name and I wrote it down like, oh, I need to check these guys out, and I just never got to it, but I knew the name.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And if you would have seen it on MySpace, you would have probably been seeing photos from Chattanooga or, ironically, Auburn.
Well, I would just go by where the act was based.
No, but I'm saying if you saw the photos and were like, this looks like a bigger band. Because if we had photos of our shows in Athens, there would have been no audience in the photos, probably.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. It was like we'd have a few people that were fans here, but if you had a photo from Chattanooga, you would see arms raised and people, trying to get to the band and stuff.
Now, so Critical Darlings, what was your first release with Critical Darlings? Your first, as far as like EP or LP, what would that be?
The original band was a power trio with me, my childhood friend Frank DeFries on bass, who moved to Athens from South Carolina to play in it, and Tom Davis on drums. And we really were kind of a prototypical kind of a power pop outfit. And we recorded an album called Come On Accept Your Joy, pretty lo-fi. And I think it came out in October of 2005. And he left in October of 2005, Tom, the drummer. And so we floundered a bit. We had some people filling in. We did some shows. We didn't miss any shows, but that kind of took the wind out of us, and we just didn't want to do it the same way. Because for me, whenever somebody leaves that's important, I want to change the project, which may not be the best idea. If we're changing, we're going to change. And then we became more of a rock thing. We became a quartet. And then we did the Satisfactionista album, which you've heard. Songs like Saturday, Rage On, all that stuff is way... I hate to describe my own stuff, but I think it's less prototypical power pop than the early stuff than it is more classic rock-oriented kind of. And it certainly expanded outward where we just weren't playing and doing the live show. You know, we could get David Bowie's piano player to play on a song, or the Drive-By Truckers drummer, whatever we felt like. And so that album is a lot more open that way.
It's very open, and it's just very varied, because that's the one I'm most familiar with.
Good.
And I was listening to it actually about an hour before we started talking, and
I'm sure that was a coincidence.
Maybe not, but the variety of styles, just even from track to track, it all seems to work together. But something like Saturday is way different than something like Tonight Never Happened. And Tonight Never Happened has all the, like, Tonight Never Happened is a track that I was really focusing on just a little while ago, because it has just so many different shifts to it. And I really like that.
Well, good. That was actually, I'm proud of that one because it's not what people would expect necessarily. That's actually a Q-Sign song that I took into the Critical Darlings. But when we did Satisfactionista, and now when you listen back to it, the album will make more sense when I tell you this. 3 of the songs were supposed to be solo songs.
Okay.
An Uncertain Flight, first song. Tonight Never Happened, which is in the middle. And Something Unseen, which is the end.
Now, I wouldn't have guessed Tonight Never Happened, because that just, at least the recording on the album, just sounds like such a band collaboration type song.
Right, but it was more the Q-Sign collaboration than this one, and me just filling in the gaps. And I'm trying to remember who played on each of them. An Uncertain Flight and Something Unseen both have Brad Morgan from Drive-By Truckers. So that's what I'm saying. So they were solo. And Tonight Never Happened was the guy that played on the rest of the album that was a band. I wonder if Josh Couillard, maybe why it feels like a band more to you. I hope so. He did a great job on that.
And another track, in fact, this is one I wanted to play right now, that I really, really like, is Happy Here and Now.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's the rocker. That's just
straight up, you know, let's rock. And I guess I respond to that even at my age now. I always will.
Good, I'm glad. I was paranoid with that song because when we first wrote it, we were coming from that power pop mold and trying to slide out where we didn't have any rules like that. And I was trying to think, can I really do something that could come out in 1978 and be on some MOR radio station between Foreigner and REO Speedwagon? And I said, screw it. I can do whatever I want. And that's kind of the heart of that song, I think, is that part of my childhood and youth where it's just like rock and roll.
And the one last thing about this album that I wanted to mention now, you just mentioned 1978. Well, another thing I really like about it is the overall the sound of it. There's not a lot of compressor just knocking everything down. There's not big reverb anywhere. It's very, you can put it on your headphones, you can put it on a stereo, and it just sounds like, hey, those guys are playing in the next room. That's awesome. It's not that's a wall of noise, I guess, for lack of a better term.
That is the expertise of David Barbie.
Okay.
If you know David, he's got a huge career as a producer and engineer and as a musician. You know, he was in Sugar in the 90s even on bass. But we made some rules, which is if it sounds specifically like it came after 1978, we cannot use it.
Okay.
And it was specifically 1978. Coincidentally, I didn't mean to say that before, but think about if you were listening to Waiting for the Siren, which is kind of the disco-y song. We were like, if a rock album in 1978 would have had something that was kind of disco-y. So we needed that, and we put the little synthetic string sounds, the Krumar sounds. That was 1978. That was us trying to put in some WKRP.
Yeah, actually, I like that track a lot too. When I first heard it, the way it comes out of the song previous to it, it sounded, I don't know if you'll like this comparison or not, I was thinking Rainbow Since You've Been Gone.
Oh, I'm totally down with that.
Okay.
Russ Ballard for the win.
Right, yeah, exactly. The Russ Ballard song. That's what just the first thing that popped into my head, like, oh, this guy's familiar with his Russ Ballard kind of music.
Exactly. It wasn't quite New York groove, but but we'll get there.
All right, well, I'm going to play one of the tracks now from Satisfactionista. It was one that we were just talking about. So this is Happy Here and Now from Chris McKay and the Critical Darlings.
I'm broke like a 45 that your mother used to love. I'm feeling a little dusted down. You know it seems that the harder I work, the harder everything gets. That dark cloud's following me around. Why can't I ever find the silver in the clouds? Why can't I ever just be satisfied and be happy here and now? Happy here and now. Happy here and now. Happy here and now. I don't know why it's such a hard time for me to have a good time. I can't take 2 steps without finding a trip. But I'm doing the best that I can. I'm just trying to see this through. And if I can, well, I did all I could do. Why can't I ever find the silver in the clouds? Why can't I ever just be satisfied and be happy here and now? Happy here and now. Happy here and now. Happy here and Why can't I be happy here and now? Happy here and now. Happy here and
All right, that was Happy Here and Now. Chris McKay and the Critical Darlings, and Chris McKay has joined me here in case you're just joining us. Chris, you still with me?
I think so.
All right.
Yeah, I was remembering the recording of Happy Here and Now when we're doubling the bass, the da 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 da. and I'm a terrible piano player. And to play that, you have to cross your hands one over the other. So for some reason, I was just visually picturing how I had to do that when I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Yeah, I really like that track. I really like that track a lot. But now I want to talk about some of your more recent work, as in post-Critical Darlings. What are some of the projects you've had or you've been a part of more recently?
I've been focusing more on what I want to do myself.
Okay.
I have no false illusions of going out and taking on the world, but I can do some things that my little base, as small as it may be, will appreciate and enjoy. And for me, it's more about an artistic thing. You know, we talked about Tonight Never Happened. It's an odd song. Mm-hmm. Something Unseen is an odd song, and I was able to fulfill it then. Now I can do whatever the hell I want.
Mm-hmm.
I did have a band a few years back called The Everyone.
I saw that.
That is musically the best band I was ever in and the best for me. Mm-hmm. It was the only time I was ever in a band where all 4 members were vital, and you couldn't switch anybody out. And unfortunately, we wound up losing one, and I had some health issues that made things very difficult, so I couldn't keep up with it for a while. But I'm coming back now as well as I can and recording on my own. And I did in that gray area. For the first time, I was drawn into the evil world of tribute bands, which I always said I'd never do. I never really did covers, but Timmy Conley here, there's a thing called Wild Rumpus, which is a big Halloween thing. He does that. But he was doing a Bowie tribute.
Okay.
And I'm a massive Bowie freak.
Mm-hmm.
And he approached me and was like, "You're one of the only people I think that could pull this off because there's so many different styles." And I was like, "I can't handle that." I was like, "How am I supposed to do Stevie Ray Vaughan, Mick Ronson, Earl Slick, Carlos Alomar? I'm not that good. I do originals." And he said he believed in me. And I was like, "Well, if I screw it up, it's his fault." And I went out and did it, and it was great. And then some of the other band members were in a thing called Abbey Road Live.
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask you about that next.
And he left Abbey Road Live. He was the guy that was doing the job. And I refused that because I was like, the Beatles are even harder. Their catalog is all over the place. And you can't jam a Beatles song. Not most of them. You got to know your stuff.
And if you feel like you butcher it, you'll feel like you're insulting the gods somehow.
Oh, not only that. The audience will let you know.
Yes, yeah.
You can play a Stone song and be loose with it.
Right, because that's
but
just
you can't do
style.
Penny Lane and be loose with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was lured in. I resisted as much as I could. But I grew up listening to those songs, and John Lennon was one of my all-time influences. And I was like, "You mean I get to go out and sing those songs and play them and get paid?"
Now, even though you were reluctant to do these tributes, did you find afterwards that it maybe pushed you into musical territory that you hadn't been in?
It made me a
before?
hell of a lot better musician.
Right. I guess that's a simpler way.
Because
of the
it was
question.
terrifying.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing, and people think I'm exaggerating. I knew how to play my songs. I did not know how to jam.
Mm-hmm.
I never had to. I never cared for it. And Abbey Road Live are a Beatles tribute band, but they come from the Grateful Dead school. So they're also in a Grateful Dead band called Cosmic Charlie.
So
that's their 2 gigs, and they don't seem like they would match up.
No, not at all.
But they do, and they brought me in. They're like, "We'll do Don't Let Me Down." That song is actually not that easy to play and sing.
I cover that one myself.
Well, then you know the da na 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 na. Doing that and singing it is complicated. But then they get through the 3 minutes of the song, and they're like, "Now go." What? The song is over. Now go. And they brought in big crowds, and I'm on stage for the first time with them, and they expect me to be taking a lead. So there are recordings of us doing Don't Let Me Down that were nearly 10 minutes long. So you would get the audience what they wanted, exactly what they wanted, and then they would go out from that. And that's fascinating. But it's terrifying if you're the guy that's in the center of it and don't know what you're doing, and they all do.
Well, and as far as
all request shows.
But as far as your solo stuff, you said you wanted to do things that were more just you. I do know that you released an EP maybe about 5, 6, 7 years ago called All Day Face?
Oh yeah, that was basically some of the songs that were left over from the Critical Darlings, and they wound up in a compilation I incorporated all of those into the quote unquote best of the Critical Darlings,
Okay.
which is called, I think it's called Best Case Scenario. But I think those are 5 songs or 4.
I believe it's 4. And the
There's
one
4 on there, and then there was one extra one. So those 5 wound up in the best of too. And that was a transitional thing.
Yeah. The one
The first time I played drums, like a full kit with me playing it, was the best of What's Around and Best Case Scenario from those recordings.
Best of What's Around was the song I was just about to ask you
Cool.
about, because I listened to those earlier today as well, and Best of What's Around, I liked all 4, but that one really just struck out to me that I really enjoyed that song. In fact, I'm hoping to play it before we shut this down.
Very personal. And when you're listening to it, remember when you hear the drumming that is literally the first song that I ever completely played a drum part. I'm not a drummer per se. I can write the drum parts, but the guy that was engineering and co-producing with me, his name's Kyle Spence. He tours with Kurt Weill now.
Okay. Kurt Weill from my hometown.
Killer musician, yeah. But when he's in town and I work with a musician, I work with him now. Mm-hmm. He did We Are the Sea also with me. But he was like, you need to get rid of the guy that you had. What are you talking about? He can't do it. And it's like, you keep giving him ideas. You're sitting here showing him physically what to play. Why don't you just do it? I can't. That's why I have a drummer here. And he said, I'm a drummer with a reputation. Come back. We're going to record you doing it alone. And I promise you, I will not let a bad drum part leave my studio. Because it'll make me look bad.
Well, yeah.
And this is the drum track he got. And after it was like, son of a bitch. I actually sound like I can play. So, and I played it.
Again,
it's just bizarre to me.
Again, pushing you into areas you never knew you had capabilities.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was not expecting that, but by that point I was trying to be receptive to the thing with when somebody believes in you, trust them. Mm-hmm. They may know something you don't.
Well, I guess we're getting to what you're doing right now in our COVID world. And your mask, this is also personal to you. The song that you released, and it's been getting some great press that I've seen.
It's weird.
I know that Athens paper picked it up, and then Savannah Now, which is incidentally, Hounddog Radio is based in Savannah these days, so I was happy to see that. But tell me about If You Don't Wear a Mask.
The complete title of the song is If You Don't Wear a Mask, You're Showing What an Ass You Are.
Uh-huh.
And I understand that it's a novelty. I understand that it is silly. It is out of my character. But my wife, again, we're in Georgia, so our government doesn't necessarily always look out for our best interest, and they required her to go back into the office even though she'd been working from home and doing just fine. Mm-hmm. And in fact, more efficiently. They told her she had to go back. She went back. They can't require anyone to wear a mask. Most of the people have the good sense and basic decency to actually wear them anyway. This one person refused outrightly. And I have some health issues now, as I've said, that I'm still battling, so I'm a little bit more immunocompromised. And of course she comes home and tells me, and I was already irritated because I knew this was happening and we didn't want her to have to go back anyway yet. And she came into the house and said that this was what's happening. And I was already aggravated, and I had my guitar on, and I said, well, how about this? And I literally played the beginning of it through the chorus like that.
Just on the spot?
Done. On the spot. That's a weird thing. There's a lot of my songs lately that are just ad-libbed. Mm-hmm. I almost feel like I didn't write them because I can just play them. Lyrics, music, everything. Done. Like no work put into them at all. Mm. And that's what came out. And I said, well, since I'm not following any rules, why don't I not do what I would do? I recorded one vocal take. The recording that you hear is the only time that song has ever been sung. No second takes. There's even a couple of bad notes. I had to repair the acoustic track once the drum track came in. But other than that, that's the first take. And I sent my vocal and acoustic to a few friends. The drummer that responded first was Andrew Hamner, who was in Abbey Road Live, and my band, The Everyone. The bass player for Cracker responded first, Brian Howard. Jason Neesmith from Pylon Reenactment Society. He used to play with Richard Lloyd. He was Richard Lloyd's other guitarist from television that played on Marquee Moon.
Oh, man,
so
I love
he would
Marquee
play
Moon.
That part.
Oh, man, yeah.
He's like, I'll play piano, because I wanted a honky-tonk thing, and the guy that plays with Hank Jr. was going to play with it, but he was taking too long, so... Who else do we get? Then it was like, we can get a fiddle. That's crazy. I knew a guy. He agreed. Pedal steel. Who do we know? Let's hit up John Neff, who founding member of Drive By Truckers, played with Jason Isbell. He's in Mike Mills' band with Mike Mills is playing now. They all agreed to do it. And so within a few days, I had this track of these incredible musicians, and then a lot of friends, including some weird guy named Eric Jefferson, contributed.
True story.
Yeah. With vocals and other instruments. And G. Robbie from L.A., who I hardly knew, even added an accordion.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to ask you. There's even an accordion on there.
She threw that in because I was like, you can throw in the vocal. And, you know, I didn't know her that well. We knew each other through online media, but it turns out if you ever watched Friends in the 90s,
Yes.
if you remember when Phoebe got married, she had somebody playing steel drums,
Oh, yeah.
playing classic rock. That was G.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
It's weird. And then we also have in the video Lisa Mende, who was the "You Gotta See the Baby" from Seinfeld. So we got a must-see TV lineup reunion on the song as well.
That's amazing. Well, we're going to play it right now. We're going to play, this is pretty brand new, I'd say, from Chris McKay and the Masketeers.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm proud to say I'm a Masketeer as well on this one. This one's called "If You Don't Wear a Mask, You're Showing What an Ass You Are."
Well, you know that you can be a racist, and maybe no one will know. And you can be a sexist and homophobe if you know how to not let it show. Yeah, you can claim to be a Christian, and you can claim to be pro-life. But if you don't wear a mask, we know that you're a liar. Well, if you don't wear a mask, you're showing what an ass you are. Yeah, if you don't wear a mask, you're showing what an ass you are. If you don't care enough about others to think of the lives you can save, well, I won't forget to put roses on your grave. Well, I
All right, we're back. Hounddog Radio. I'm talking to Chris McKay. And that was one of his brand new songs called If You Don't Wear a Mask. That's the clean version. You could find that on bandcamp.com and pretty much could you find that on iTunes and other services as well, Chris?
I released the song quick enough that we still have to wait for all of those outlets to catch up. So Bandcamp.
Bandcamp's where it's at anyway. You can get yourself the version we just played, which is the quote-unquote clean version. You can get let's say uncensored version, if you dare. There's even an instrumental version if you want to sing along, which I thought was brilliant.
I thought that was necessary in this case for a ridiculous song. I was like, it would serve me right if all the music I've done for my entire life, this stupid song was the one that gets the most attention that I just threw out and didn't even put any thought into other than the immediate
Maybe
gut
years from now, when all this
feeling.
is thankfully behind us, it'll become kind of a retro thing for karaoke. Hey, remember
That's
the COVID
interesting.
days?
That's interesting.
Do you have that?
That's
If you
interesting.
don't wear a mask song, let's sing it. Sing along.
I would love for it to be a weird memory of a formerly dark time that we've overcome. Soon.
Exactly. But that's not the only newish music you have going. I want to talk to you about another track called "We Are the Sea." Can you tell me some things about that?
What's weird to me is that the song is a couple of years old, but it's taking on its own life now, which I'm very happy to see, but it's just strange to see how it's playing itself out, and it's doing it itself. But I don't ever calculate what I write, but then I do. Because I did in this case. It was like, I need a simple chord progression. I chose that D walk down that most people use. Because I wanted the music to not be taken away from the lyric. And then I thought of the rest of the song like a child's story, trying to tell the story of someone basically misleading their way into power, misusing it, and then the inevitable rise against this abuse and the recovery of the kingdom, the nation, whatever word you want, into their healing.
Okay.
Because they heal themselves ultimately as the sea washes everything clean again and things heal. And the video has started getting a lot of plays. And just this week I saw it connected to a Lincoln Project thing, which I think is amazing. So it started getting like a couple thousand hits on Facebook, not even YouTube, on Facebook, which is odder. And then people reaching out to me. And can we use it for this? Can we use it for that? Absolutely. Whatever you want. If it helps the cause to make American lives safer again, make our lives more secure again, I don't care. Use the song, please.
All right. Well, I think we can play it right now. You sent me a version of it that I'd be happy to play, so we're going to play that.
Oh, yeah, I sent you the video version, which is the preferred edit, I think. Because the song gets really weird on the full length, which is over 11 minutes long, and it gets really disorienting. So I gave you the semi-disorienting mix.
Well, I'm semi-disoriented most times anyway, so that works out.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, this is We Are the Sea from Chris McKay.
Seeing the sea recede, a foolish man thinks he's beaten the tide, so he goes deeper in, shaking his fist with a threat to the sky. Then he looks to the shore, calling to those who choose to be fooled. I have defeated the sea, so clearly I am the one to rule. the sea, time is the tide. We have the power to make things right. We will not change, we will not stop. The ocean is made of single drops. We are the sea, time is the tide. We have the power to make things right. We will not change, we will not stop. The ocean is made of single drops. Many followed him in. Emboldened, they scrawled their hate in the sand. Our words will stand for all time. Just as the sea came crashing in, and there was nowhere to run. No one to blame, no God and no gun. Nothing could stop the wave until the wave was done. We are the sea, time is the tide. We have the power to make things right. We will not change, we will not stop. The ocean is made of single drops. We are the sea, time is the tide. We have the power to make things right. We will not change, we will not stop. The ocean is made of single drops. Now there is no sound except for waves and birds and life. The ugliness is gone, taken by the incoming tide. And every wave that crashes reclaims what was always to be. And the clock will only go forward into history. We are the sea, time is the tide. We have the power to make things right. We will not change, we will not stop. The ocean is made of single drops. We are the sea, time is the tide. We have the power to make things right. We will not change, we will not stop. The ocean is made of single drops. We are the sea, time is the tide. We have the power to make things right. We will not change, we will not stop. The ocean is made of single drops. We are the sea, time is the tide. We have the power to make things right. We will not change, we will not stop. The ocean is made of single drops. We are the sea, time is the tide. We have the power to make things right. We will not change, we will not stop. The ocean is made of single drops. We are the sea, time is the tide. We have the power to make things right. We will not change, we will not stop. The ocean is made of single drops. We are the sea, time is the tide. We have the power to make things right. We will not change, not stop. The ocean is made of single drops. We are the sea, time is the tide. We have the power to make things right. We will not change, not stop. The ocean is made of single drops. We are the sea, time is the tide. We have the power to make things right. We will not change, not
Hounddog Radio. This is Eric Jefferson. I'm talking to Chris McKay, who's been joining me this hour. I want to thank you, Chris,
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we've enjoyed the songs. But I wanted to ask you, we touched on it earlier in our conversation. In addition to your musical career, you're also a world-class photographer. And that's I knew you have that at least on your website as your quote-unquote day job. But that's maybe the coolest day job of anybody I've ever heard.
When it's good, it's good. It was way more difficult than people realize, I promise you, because there are a lot of people that think you're just going to take pictures.
Right.
Oh, it's a hell of a lot more.
I know,
than
but
that.
it's nowhere near that simple.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah.
I mean, even just dealing with managers and agents and credentials and publicists and liaisons, and that's maddening alone. Much less than you're dealing with rights issues and contracts, and it's nuts. But as I said, when it's good, it's good. And when you're at this point, because I can't shoot anymore, there's nothing happening.
Right.
So, but I do have this archive now of nearly 20 years of stuff that's being still run worldwide. The royalties are less per month, but they're still there. And there's still a chance at any month that somebody may put a giant billboard up in Bulgaria with one of my images, since they're syndicated, and I get a nice little check. So that's without that, I don't know how we would have survived. Period.
Mm-hmm. Now, is photography something that was always a passion in addition to music, or is it something that you just kind of found by accident and then realized, wow, I really enjoy this?
Music is the thing. Music,
Yeah.
Everything that I've ever done in life has been connected to music and photography. You notice I'm a music photographer.
Well, yeah.
When I was a kid, I started going to shows when I was barely 12, and I took a Polaroid. And it was Loverboy opening for Journey on the Escape tour. And I went into the pit because things were so slack. Security-wise, my stepfather took us and was like, hey, can my tiny little stepson, and I was a tiny guy, come in? And they was like, oh, how sweet, how cute, and lets me right into the pit at my first show. And I went up and tried to take photos, and Steve Perry saw this stupid little kid and started laughing and pointing, and then he started running.
He started running.
So I would chase him. Because he thought it was amusing, and I did that a few times. The only photo I have is of something that looks like blue jeans floating in the air that are blurry from that show. But even, again, for my first show of the thousands I went to, I was in the damn pit.
That's amazing. I love that.
And then I was doing it illegally, and I think it was in '83 when they started saying, no cameras allowed. Mm-hmm. And I would still do it anyway. I got my film taken from me in 1990 by Robert Plant's manager.
I saw you post something about that recently.
Yeah, I'm a huge Zeppelin guy, and I waited till the end of the night, and I was standing there, and I knew how the Zeppelin legend about photos and things, but I was like, he's right there in front of me. He sees me. I'm a few feet away from him, and he started posing for me. He literally started posing. He knew what he was doing. He was luring me in. And I was like, screw this. He saw the camera on me, but I wasn't taking anything. I started taking them. I'm not going to miss this chance. And he was posing, doing all of his Plant stuff. Mm-hmm. And then he looked at me and stopped for a second. And he was, during the song, Wearing and Tearing. And he wagged his finger at me.
Oh. And
smiled very slowly. And then he pointed down to his guy and then pointed at me. And then started laughing. And of course the guy came and took my film and just ripped the film out and threw it on the floor. And that was the end of that.
Oh boy. Yeah. So it was, dangled in front of you and then taken away. Yes,
and then it got to the point where when I became official, it was 2000 basically, and concerts had gotten prohibitively expensive for anyone. And I'd like to go to shows, and I like to go to a lot of shows. I couldn't afford that anymore. When the Stones blew the barrier in 94, $50 was a lot. But we got $50 to see the Stones from the fourth row in Columbia. That was like, okay, that's the edge. After that, it was like 100 and 150.
Huh.
And I started thinking over the years, what can I do? I was like, I wonder if I could become a writer. And Flagpole magazine in Athens, it's just a local rag, it's like Free Times.
I know Flagpole.
Yeah, and I one day I measured up my courage. And I went down to talk to their music editor, and I said, you guys really don't cover the shows that I'm interested in. I like big shows. They were more alternative. And I said, would you mind if I go cover some shows, and wrote a review? And Ballard Leeseman was the guy there, and he just kind of looked at me and said, have you ever written before? Nope. You go to school for it? Nope.
Yeah.
Well, why do you want to do it? And I was like, I would just like to try if I could.
Incidentally, I saw the Stones '94 tour in Philadelphia, and I have a camera-related story of my own for that. I've just, at best, I've been an amateur photographer. At best. But that was back in the days of film cameras, of course, and smuggling them in to shows. Because, so my friend and I went, and I had a Pentax camera, and I put it down my pants, and we got onto the field at Veterans Stadium. It was the football and baseball field back in those days. That's where the Stones were playing. And my friend hopped the rail at just the right time. My camera, being where it was, slowed me down just enough that security saw me. So I got chased all around the field of Veterans Stadium, and I hopped over another rail. And long story short, he wound up about where you were, about 4th or 5th row. And I found a place up in the first level, and I took some pictures that I still have to this day. That's my Stones '94 story.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not? You see those spectacles. I don't understand how people wouldn't want to take some photos. You don't need to be like a cell phone, like where it's on all the time. But anyway, I like capturing things.
Can you give me just one or two stories just off the top of your head of, in case folks are just joining us? Not only is Chris a just tremendous musician, he's also a photographer who specializes in concert photography. And I can't even count how many shows that he's shot over the years. He has just this incredible portfolio of photos. But is there anything that stands out of you as like, this is one of the craziest things that ever happened to me as a photographer?
That's hard to even know where to begin with that stuff. I mean, I was standing backstage one day, and not backstage, like out beside the stage, being ready to shoot. And somebody grabs me and was like, we need to get a photo with Ringo. What?
That's great.
What? And they take me back, and all of a sudden I'm talking to Ringo Starr and telling him where to move. I was like, there's doors behind you, they're distracting. And Ringo looked at me and just says, what, you don't like doors? Doors are arty.
Oh, wow.
Which is totally Ringo.
Yeah.
And then he did his thing, and it was over, and he's walking out on the stage straight to Don't Come Easy. And, all these times it's like, I'm standing on stage now with Robert Plant while he's singing Black Dog. If I'm thinking of one story, though, the one thing that still freaks me out isn't even about somebody that's a personal idol. I was the house photographer for the BET Hip Hop Awards for a couple of years. And security's pretty tight at these events, as you might imagine.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the person ahead of BET wasn't available, and they had a fill-in person, and this person decided to accidentally make my life hell by telling me, I need you here, and I need you half a mile away at the same time. And I've got a headset. Go there. I can't be in both places. And finally I was told, they're coming in, get some photos from the limos. Fine. I'm doing portraits, I think at this time with Wiz Khalifa, and then I get urgent messages, you have to be back at the red carpet. We need you there now. And I'm like, screw this. I'm going to talk to somebody. And I went back to the red carpet, and this person, we have to have you here. How could you be over there? I was only there because you told me to be, but you hired me because you trust me. You know my history. You know what I do. You need to let me do my job the way I do it. And I was just looking at her, and I heard somebody coming up behind me. There was a lot of people, that had come through on the red carpet already. And I just put my hand in a stop motion, and I kept speaking to her, and I said, I'm doing what I need to do, and you need to leave me the hell alone. And she kind of humped and walked away, and then I looked where my hand was on somebody's chest, and it was 50 Cent.
Oh.
And I had blocked him in his path. And I took my hand down, and he gave me that terrifying look that I'm sure you've seen, where he just looked cold and scary. And there were all these photographers behind the rope line, and all these other celebrities in the distance, and everybody's kind of looking. And I was like, if I show fear, I'm dead. And I said, you, to him, and pointed to him, I need you over here. You don't talk to anybody before me. I get the shots, and then you do whatever the hell you need to do. Cool? And he didn't move.
No.
And kept staring, and then he just started laughing. He's like, I don't want to piss you off. We're good. I don't want to mess with you, man. And we got the photos, and then he started, like, photobombing all my other stuff. Like, he jumped, I was doing some stuff with French Montana and some other people, and he jumps in 50 Cent. Like, making big goofy faces, because now he likes me.
Yeah, I was going to say, now you're accepted. He's decided you're all right.
Absolutely. And he was giving me all this stuff, and the other photographers were like, can't we get that shot? He's like, sure, but he's not doing it for you. He's jumping in between me and you, and I can't help where he's doing it. But I got all these exclusives, and it was great. But then the next day, it turns out there were shots fired behind the venue between French Montana's people and 50 Cent's people. So then my photos were like worldwide. But yeah, no, that moment of fear with, oh my God, I could die now, is one that jumps into my head immediately.
Yeah, I could see why. Well, now,
yes, I remember his face vividly.
Now, if folks wanted to check out some of your work, what's the best way to do that?
There's no truly easy way because they're in different outlets. I would recommend quotation marks on Google, Chris McKay in quotes, and then Getty.
Okay.
Getty. You'll see thousands of stuff over the years, and there's other outlets, but that's the main one where you'll see the most, I think.
Okay. I myself.
So sorry for that being complicated, but there's just a lot.
In fact, I'm just looking right at it. The room that I'm sitting in now, I purchased one of your shots myself. Lindsey Buckingham, 2006.
Oh, awesome.
For our Variety Playhouse. I was at that show, and I remember seeing you actually posted that photo, and I thought, well, damn, I was there. I was at that show.
And that was his first show since what, 92? That was a solo show?
And so I thought, okay, well, that one's kind of personal, and it's a terrific shot. And I thought, oh, what the hey? I'm just gonna, I'm gonna snag a copy of this.
That shot worked because I wanted a shot from that night for so long, but it was so dark, and that was his first song, his first night, right? Wasn't that what's the song called?
Was it? I remember he did Big Love. He did the vacation.
Is it
song,
Not
Holiday.
Too Late? I think it's
Maybe.
Not Too Late was the first song.
I don't remember what his first song was that night, but
Not Too Late, Trouble, and Never Going Back Again, I think were the three opening songs.
I met him in the parking lot afterwards, me and a bunch of other people. He said hello, and he said, we got to go, and that's my Lindsey Buckingham meeting story.
Well,
it's
we
pretty
passed
engaging.
Our notebook on stage, and he signed it. That's as close as we get.
Well, man, I want to thank you for this. I've enjoyed the conversation. I've enjoyed the music, and I'm sure everybody else out there has enjoyed it. I want to take us out on one of your other songs that I just discovered today, and I really dig it. I wanted to ask you if you could tell me a little bit more. I think we talked about it briefly earlier in our discussion, but Best of What's Around. Tell me a little more about that. Yeah,
that song came at that weird juncture where you're leaving a long-term project, which was the Critical Darlings, and you don't know where you're going yet. I had been going through a lot of personal losses, my father, my grandmother, who basically raised me, my father-in-law, and I was trying hard not to focus on what I had lost. And I just wanted to focus on what's around. And what's the hook in the song? Gotta make the best of what's around.
Mm-hmm.
Started from there, went backwards. Doesn't matter how I feel as long as I get through the day. And that's the line that was all I needed. Once that line came, the rest of the song was done. Just surviving, getting through, focus on what's there, what's left, and what's to come.
All right. Well, I want to thank you again, my friend. I've really enjoyed our discussion. Check out Chris McKay. Both music and photography, you will not be disappointed either way. Trust me. You can find Chris's stuff on Bandcamp, the music stuff. You can also find a lot of it on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, wherever if you get good old fashioned hard copies, I'm sure that could be had too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's a few.
Yeah. And I heartily recommend it. I'm personally a big fan of his album Satisfactionista. So pick that one up if you want to have some music that doesn't suck. That would be a good thing to have. Chris, my friend, thanks again.
Thanks, Eric.
We're gonna go out on this one. Best of What's Around, Chris McKay.